Hi everyone, Ian from DIY Home and Gardening, 28th of November in the garage, and I'm doing some, traying up, potting up of Dahlia tubers. So if I turn the camera around, we can have a look together. Well, these are the Dahlias that I dug up just 4 or 5 days ago. As you can see, they've all been cut back, they've all been sorted out, labelled and trayed up, ready for overwintering. Ordinarily, I would let them dry for a couple of weeks before I'd get to this stage, but the way the weather's been, with it being so cold, the tubers did get cold in the ground, and I decided to set up the heated benches earlier in the greenhouse, partly to warm the greenhouse, but also to get ahead on a few cuttings. So it's one of those where the benches are running, might as well make use of them and use the benches to carry on drying this lot and see whether we can get some early growth and some early cuttings. So that's all the Dahlias done that were at the allotment, plus a couple others. And I've pulled this one tonight, which is a variety called Hyperminto, which is a nice bicolour flower. Not any good for showing, but it's great as a cut flower because it just lasts forever, really. But I've been growing that in a container, so I thought I'd show you on this one basically the prep work involved, how I do it and why. So let me just get the camera set up. Right, okay, so as I say, this variety is Hyperminto. You can see it's still on the damp side, so ordinarily I wouldn't do any work on them while they're this damp, so they would get a chance to dry off. But because I know this is going to go straight on the heated mats, it doesn't matter so much. Now, okay, so first things first. Let's talk hygiene. There's a lot of talk all the time about getting Dahlia gall, and a way to avoid that is through good hygiene. And generally speaking, throughout the growing season at the allotment, then I tend to use either, a singular knife that is cleaned at the start of season, or fingers which are always clean anyway. Certainly not enough to be spreading diseases. But at this time of year, where you're literally moving from tuber to tuber to tuber, it is a good idea to make sure that you're cleaning your secateurs or your pruning stuff in between plant to plant. And so all I use is just some surgical spirit. You can see by the age of the label, I've had it a while. Just a little cup, and make sure you do the lid up tight, so this isn't one for children to be using, and definitely don't drink it. So start off, just sterilise the secateurs. You don't need to dry them off. And I tend to do my pruning or my cutting back as though I'm pruning normally. So looking at where your joints are for where the leaves would have been, cut there or just above that, because by doing that means that you'll end up with a nice solid stem. You won't have a hole that runs down the stem because of the way that the leaf joint is, how it's structured. So if you cut, let me show you, if you cut on a normal one, you end up with a hole. But if you cut, I just showed you, on a joint, you don't. And so we're cutting it back really quite hard. Don't worry, you won't damage it because all the growth will come from around that base section. So let me just get the label on. So as I said in the lifting video, if you've seen it the other day, plastic labels always have a hole in one end. string and just run the string through the hole of the label, or the hole that is in the label, and secure it around the neck of your plant. That way, if you're planting in or potting into a mixed tray or mixed pot, you're not going to get them mixed up. And when you come to take your cuttings, you won't end up with a load of cuttings thinking they're one variety when they're a different one. So that is the first bit done, all the tidying up of removing the foliage. Then we come down to doing this. So I tend to just use a pair of scissors just because they're always to hand. Carefully get rid of the excess compost soil that's around it. If this had come out of the ground, as in the allotment, then I would be looking for making sure that there weren't any worms within this, or more importantly, any wireworm, which is the golden yellow orange worm looking thing, which is the thing that likes to eat through tubers. So just go through, clear this up. It's easier, much easier to do this element once it's dried, because the compost literally falls away and you can see much quicker as to what you're doing. You can see odd bits of the white there. That's the perlite from when this was originally a cutting. So that was the perlite mixture that we used within the compost to provide the drainage. So it's right into the centre of the plant. So because I'm potting these anyway, I'm not too worried so much. Right, so the important bit is this neck and these, let's move closer, and these fatter parts of the tuber, because they're the bits that store the energy that are going to drive the growth in the new shoots on this. We do not need these spidery bits of root. They contribute nothing for the stage we're at, but they will rot, and they will be the first to rot and cause us issues. So we just remove them where you can. Also at this stage, if you've got any tubers that are showing signs of rot, damage, decay, remove those also. You will not need to put any fungicides or anything like that on your cuts. It's not required. So just carefully do that. So work our way through. Because these are wet, because it's late in the season, do not attempt, or do not be tempted to use water to clean up the tuber. It's wet enough already. Any excess moisture will cause it to rot. If we were doing this in a dry period, dry autumn, then and the tubers are already been sufficiently dried out in a shed or greenhouse or whatever, or just sitting dry, then yes, you can wash them with some water, so long as you're then going to be in a position to allow them to dry sufficiently before moving them into a cooler, or before the colder weather hits. But if they get wet whilst they're already wet and cold, they will rot. So try not to do it. Right, so that's our tuber prepped up, all done. For the time being, we'll stand it there. Just change the angle marginally. See how messy the garage is, can't you? So let's just move that out of the way. So now we go to the nothing too technical element. Let's pop the gloves on. So I'm using these, which are mushroom crates. We get quite a few of them from work, or vegetable crates. To do these potting, you can just use a normal cardboard tray. You could use a pot, ice cream container, anything you want, so long as it will allow some excess drainage through the bottom. In terms of lining it, this year I'm using newspaper. Some years I use newspaper, some years I use capillary matting if I've got some odd bits spare, and other years I've used the bits of polythene from compost bags, just making sure to put some holes in the base though to let out any excess moisture. So just pop your newspaper up the sides. The only reason we're doing this is to retain the compost, and it doesn't really matter what compost you're using, but again, if you can do, allow your compost to warm up to room temperature, or certainly warmer than if you'd left it outside, and likewise allow some of that moisture to drain out. So this compost has been sitting in here for about 10 days, I think, something like that. Right, so I've put a layer in the bottom there, smooth that out the way, and all we're going to do is just find a position that allows a reasonable proportion of this tuber to be covered. You haven't got to cover the whole thing. As long as some of it's covered, that's going to allow some rooting. And for the time being, I'm going to do potting into one side. Just allows a bit of space for if I find any other tubers that I need to do. So just fill in as we go. I'll tell you what, let's do that, then you can kind of see what I'm doing. So just getting it into the corners of the tray, around the tubers themselves. Just almost planting like it's a normal container you'd be filling, so making sure you're getting out the air pockets by firming in nicely around that plant. The only difference being is that you don't need to totally plant it. Oh, label's got caught up. So I always try and keep the label on the top, and that way when it starts sprouting you can see what the varieties are quite easily, and becomes more apparent once we get another plant into the back end here. Then literally that is it. So it's not totally covered, it doesn't need to be, and rather than trying to lift that up, I'll lift the camera. It's going to be safer, isn't it? There we are. And that's it. And that's it. That's Hyperminto done. Now, that's how it looks. That's how the rest of them look. And essentially, that lot there are now just going to go into the greenhouse, onto the heated bench, and that's where they'll stay. I will not water them anymore until basically still see signs of any growth and this compost has dried. You're literally just using the compost as packing material to allow them to root into something which is going to enable them to start growing and producing shoots for cuttings. So that's why we're doing this early, is essentially to allow for propagation by way of cuttings. If you're not worried about doing cuttings and you're just simply wanting to overwinter, then you can just literally leave them in, plant them into some pots and put them into a frost-free, warmish environment. When I say warmish, it's definitely got to be frost-free, but about 5 degrees is sufficient to keep them ticking over. but make sure you cut them back like this, because if you leave any of this top growth on, we can see on some of these stems here, they will start dying back quite quickly and will rot. And these are some bits that were cut off the other day. So as soon as that starts rotting, dying back, that can quite quickly get into the top of the plant, which is the crown or the neck, and that's when you got issues. So anyway, that's it. Nice and simple, job done. Okay, so that is video done. How to clean up and prepare your Dahlia tubers ready for winter. I guess that's the easiest way to describe it. Obviously they're all set up now. It's always worth having a consideration about your health and hygiene of the plants, how you're going to be dealing with them, especially if you're dealing with some traded plants, i.e. someone else has grown them, given them to you. The last thing you want is to be cutting from one plant to another plant and another, potentially spreading disease from stock that you don't know the background of to your fresh stock. So as I say, just the backstop is for me using the old surgical spirit. Just make sure that it's gives you nice sterile tools and clean plants, which are going to give you nice healthy cuttings, because that's what you need. So if you got any questions about this video or indeed any others, then please send those questions to me. I'll do my very best to answer them for you. If you'd have liked the video or indeed other videos, then please subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to hit that reminder button so you don't miss out on the future videos. And I always say it, but it's so true, just enjoy yourself, have fun and try something different. And if that happens to be experimenting in overwintering slightly different to how you would otherwise, see how your results compare to just leaving them in the pots for argument's sake, then give it a go. Might be a game changer for you, just help you out in your growing for future years. So till next time, bye for now.